Life is full of surprises, and sometimes it leads us down paths that we never anticipated. If someone had told me years ago that I would be here today living alone in the vibrant city of Ginger with my son, cherishing the beautiful memories of my husband, I would have found it hard to believe. It's curious how life unfolds. We plan and dream, yet it doesn't always align with our hopes. Becoming a mother was one of the greatest aspirations. Since I got married to my beloved, I envisioned cuddling a baby in my arms, watching them grow and hearing the sweet word, Mama. However, that dream didn't come easily. For 4 long years, my husband Aziz and I tried to conceive. Month after month, I held on to hope, only to be met with disappointment. Initially, I thought it was just a matter of time and that perhaps God had a special plan for us. But as the years passed, my hope began to fade. It was painful to see other women with their children, and while I smiled and celebrated their joy, inside I questioned, why not me? What am I doing wrong? Eventually we decided to consult a doctor in Kampala, yet I sought answers. After conducting tests, the doctor concluded that I was perfectly healthy. I felt relief wash over me, but then we learned that Aziz was facing challenges. My heart ached for him. He was such a good man, and I knew how deeply he longed to be a father. We didn't discuss it much at first. The pain was evident in his eyes. He blamed himself even though it was beyond his control. For a while we felt lost, unsure of the next steps. Then the doctor proposed an idea we had never considered, using a sperm donor. At first, it felt strange, and we questioned whether we could truly bring a child into the world this way. We spent countless nights discussing it, sometimes arguing but mostly seeking to understand each other's feelings. Ultimately, we decided to proceed. When I discovered I was pregnant, it felt like a miracle. All the sadness and struggles we had endured were finally worth it. I sensed that our lives were about to change forever. When our son Akora was born, I felt like the sun had finally risen after a long dark night. The moment I held him in my arms for the first time, tears streamed down my face, a mix of relief, gratitude, and pure love. He was so tiny and perfect. My heart expanded to hold all the love I felt for him. If I thought I was happy, Aziz was on an entirely different level. I had never seen him so elated. He paraded around the hospital room, proudly showing off our newborn son to every nurse, doctor, and visitor. "This is my boy," he exclaimed, his voice brimming with pride. From the moment we brought Akora home, Aziz fully embraced fatherhood. He was always there, feeding him, changing diapers, and rocking him to sleep. He didn't leave it all to me, which only deepened my love for him. He would wake up in the middle of the night when Akora cried, ensuring I could get some rest. As our son grew, so did their bond. Aziz cherished every stage of fatherhood. When Akora was old enough to crawl, Aziz would join him on the floor, laughing as if they were sharing a secret joke. When Akora began to walk, Aziz held his tiny hands, cheering him on with every unsteady step. Our home overflowed with laughter and love as we spent evenings together, sharing meals and playing games. Aziz would sit on the floor, building blocks with Akora, or reading him bedtime stories. Watching them together filled my heart with warmth. For a while, it felt as if nothing could go wrong. We had each other, we had Akora, and our little world was perfect. Those were some of the happiest days of my life, days I thought would last forever. As the years rolled by, it was a joy to see Akora blossom from a curious little boy into a confident and capable man. Each milestone filled us with pride. His first day of school, his academic achievements, and the kindness he showed to others. Aziz and I often reflected on how blessed we were to have him in our lives. Akora was not only intelligent, he was hardworking and determined. One ordinary day, however, our world turned upside down. Akora, who had been diligently working to provide for us, was involved in a tragic accident at his workplace. At first, I couldn't believe it. I thought it must have been a mistake or that the injury wasn't serious. But when the news finally came, it felt like a thunderbolt hit me. My beloved husband Aziz didn't make it. Those 4 words shattered my heart. The air left my lungs and it seemed unreal that he was gone, just like that. The man who had been my partner, my support, and my best friend was taken from us. The days that followed were some of the darkest. The house felt eerily silent without his laughter and presence. Akora tried to be strong for me, but I could see the pain in his eyes. He had lost his father, his role model, and I had lost the love of my life, the man who had been my rock for so many years. It felt as if the foundation of our family had crumbled. We were still standing, but barely. Every corner of the house reminded me of Aziz, the chair he loved to sit in, the lingering scent of his cologne, and the sound of his voice echoing in my mind. Somehow, we had to keep moving forward. Akora and I clung to each other, finding strength in our bond, but the void he left felt impossible to fill. Life would never be the same without Aziz. It was just Akora and me now, and the house felt emptier than I had imagined. Each room seemed too spacious, too quiet, as if mourning our loss. At first, the silence was unbearable. I would sit alone in the evenings, yearning for sounds that would never come again. The shuffle of Aziz's footsteps, his voice calling out, and his laughter. Yet life, as it always does, continued. Akora had his own path to follow, and I knew I had to let him. He poured himself into his studies, determined to make something of himself. Watching him work so hard filled me with mixed emotions. Sadness because his father wasn't there to witness it, and pride as he became everything he had hoped for. With each passing year, I watched Akora grow into a remarkable young man. He was intelligent, kind, and carried himself with the strength and grace of someone far beyond his years, reflecting the value Aziz instilled in him. When he graduated from university, I was the proudest mom in the room, tears streaming down my face as I applauded him, knowing the obstacles he had overcome to reach that moment. But he didn't stop there. He worked tirelessly and soon became a successful architect. Seeing his designs come to life, knowing he was building a future for himself filled my heart with joy. I often thought about how Aziz would have reacted, how proud he would have been. He's done it, I whispered to myself, smiling through the tears. As Akora's career flourished, so did his personal life. He met a young woman, a sweet and intelligent soul who brought out the best in him. His eyes sparkled with excitement whenever he spoke about her. One day he came home and announced that he planned to marry her. My heart swelled with happiness. Yet amidst my joy for him lingered a profound loneliness that I could not shake. The house still felt too quiet, and my evenings remained long. Yet every time I looked at Akora, I reminded myself of the blessings I had. He was thriving, and his happiness gave me a sense of purpose, even in the emptiness of my days. One day Akora came home with his fiancée. She was kind and thoughtful, and they sat me down to talk about my life. Gently she brought up the idea of me remarrying. At first I was taken aback. Akora explained that he worried about my loneliness, especially now that he was planning to start his own family. I smiled at him, assuring them I was fine, brushing off their concerns, but deep down I acknowledged their truth. Each night, as I climbed into bed, the emptiness beside me felt heavier than I wanted to admit. The silence in the house wasn't peaceful, it was deafening. I had to learn to live with it, but it still hurt. The nights stretched on, allowing too much time for reflection. Memories of Aziz flooded my mind, the way he used to hold my hand as we drifted to sleep, the warmth of his presence beside me, and the comfort of his voice after a long day. Now I was left with those memories and the cold, empty side of the bed. That particular night, I lay awake longer than usual, my friend's words replaying in my head. You deserve happiness too. It wasn't the first time I heard it, but this time it lingered. Was it really time to consider moving on? Could I even imagine letting someone else into my life after everything I had been through? Lost in thought, I didn't notice how late it had gotten until a knock at my door startled me. I sat up, my heart racing, glancing at the clock, 2 a.m. My first instinct was worry. "Mom?" It was Akora's soft, hesitant voice. "Come in," I said, trying to sound calm despite the questions swirling in my mind. He entered, wearing his usual look of quiet confidence. But tonight there was something else. Concern. He sat at the edge of my bed, his face serious yet kind. "Mom," he began, his voice gentle but firm. "I know you miss Dad. I see it every day, even when you try to hide it. I know you've been so strong for me all these years." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "You deserve happiness too. You deserve to have someone by your side, someone to share your life with." His words hit me harder than I expected. I had always seen him as my child, my responsibility, someone I needed to protect. But here he was, grown into a man, trying to care for me. The love and concern in his eyes tightened my chest. I didn't know what to say, so I simply looked at him. "You've spent so many years putting me first, Mom," he continued. "But now it's time to think about you. I just want you to be happy." As I stared at my son, the boy I had raised was now a man. I felt a mix of emotion, pride, gratitude, and a flicker of hope. For the first time I wondered if maybe he was right. Perhaps it was time to consider myself, to release the past just enough to open my heart to the possibility of a new chapter. I was speechless. I had always focused on his happiness, never pausing to think about my own. Tears welled in my eyes as I realized how much he cared for me. He continued, "I'm getting married soon, and while I'll always be here for you, it won't be the same. I want you to think about this. Please, Mom, don't shut yourself off from the idea of finding love again." I nodded, unsure of what to say. After he left, I lay awake, thinking about his words. Could I open my heart to someone new? Would it be fair to Aziz's memory? The following weeks were a whirlwind of emotions and quiet reflection. Each evening, as I sat alone in the house, Akora's words echoed in my mind. His concern for me, his insistence that I deserved happiness. It wasn't just him. His fiancé, with gentle encouragement and kind words, added to the chorus, urging me to consider a change. At first the idea felt strange, almost unthinkable. How could I even begin to imagine a life with someone else? Aziz had been my world, my partner, my everything. The thought of opening my heart again felt like betraying his memory. Yet as days turned into weeks, I realized that holding on to the past didn't really mean I could embrace the future. Life, after all, doesn't pause for anyone. It keeps moving, dragging us along whether we are ready or not. I had spent so many years focused on being a good wife and a loving mother, and then navigating the grief of losing my husband. Somewhere along the way, I had forgotten about myself. Who was I beyond these roles? What did I want now that my son was grown and building a life of his own? With these questions swirling in my mind, I began to entertain the idea my son had suggested. It wasn't easy. Doubts crept in, whispering that I was too old, that I should be content with my memories. But then I would see the hope in Akora's eyes, the way he looked at me, as if he believed I deserved more than just memories. One evening as we sat together over dinner, he brought it up again. "Mom," he said softly yet steadily, "you don't have to decide anything right now, but just think about it. You've spent so much of your life taking care of everyone else. Now it's your turn to be cared for." His words lingered long after the plates were cleared and the house grew quiet. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to imagine what it might be like to share my life with someone else again. Having someone to talk to laugh with, to lean on during tough times. The idea didn't seem so impossible anymore. The journey ahead was uncertain, and the thought of starting over was both exciting and terrifying. But I knew I wasn't alone. With Akora's unwavering support and the encouragement of his fiancé, I felt a spark of courage I hadn't felt in years. It was small, but it was enough to take the first step. For the first time in a long while, I began to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was still more happiness waiting for me. If you enjoy this kind of story and want to hear more, please make sure to like, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more thrilling content. Your support means a lot. Thank you for being part of this journey.